Could you just explain to me why the term institutionally racist, sexist and homophobic is deemed to be politically charged by the Home Secretary, but the use of the term invasion is not? Is that not politically charged?
Well, I mean, I think I addressed that previously anyway in PMQs the other day, but I think that the findings of the Casey report are shocking, it's appalling, and it's right that action is taken by all those who have responsibility, whether that's the Met Commissioner or indeed the Mayor of London, who is, of course, the person with primary accountability politically for the Met to make improvements.
Not legally, it's not politically charged using the word invasion.
As I said, with regard to the Casey report, it's important that changes are made.
No, I'm asking you about invasion, use of the word invasion to describe the small boats problem.
I think, look, it's very clear that the scale of the problem is significant and growing. I mean, when you've had a quadrupling or quintupling of the number of illegal arrivals in the space of just 2 years, it's important to actually recognise the pace of what's happening, and that's a very large number, and it's growing very quickly.
But my specific question is it politically charged to use the word invasion in relation to the small boats problem?
What I would say is the situation is one that is significant and it's growing, and it's important that we take action to stop it.
Okay, well, it seems to me that it is politically charged to use the word invasion. I mean, we know that use of that type of word inflames people and gets the far right particularly inflamed.
Well, I think actually what matters are actions, and I think what people want to see is that we're taking action to grip this problem.
Doesn't it, Prime Minister?
And I think that's what we're doing, whether it's with the legislation, it's said cooperation with the French, all the other things we're doing. I think what that demonstrates is action to grip a problem which is significant and growing.
Okay, I think language matters, Prime Minister. Thank you.
When it comes to Northern Ireland, you're a fan of the single market now. When did you take the road to Damascus on that very issue?
No, I think what I was referring to, and actually it's I'd say, I'm sad that we're having this conversation again, because I think what I was very clearly referring to is the unique status of Northern Ireland in the United Kingdom, because it's the only part of the United Kingdom that shares a land border with a member of the EU, and also is a part of our country that has had a history of troubles, and the balance of the Belfast Good Friday Agreement is incredibly important to ensuring stability and peace in Northern Ireland, and it was decided by everybody that we shouldn't have a hard border on the island of Ireland, and that's why Northern Ireland has a special and unique status inside the United Kingdom that I think everyone acknowledges, and actually trying to make political points about that I don't think is appropriate, and I think it's very clear that Northern Ireland is different in that regard, and it's right that we respect the Belfast Good Friday Agreement and the balance that is required to make sure that the agreement works properly.
Well, before your 180-degree turn on the single market, it is important, because you know, and you will have certainly known as Chancellor, that it's a 4% or 5% damage to GDP is this choice for the UK to leave the single market and the customs union. It is affecting people on the day-to-day. It's affecting their costs of living. Prime Minister, if it's okay for Northern Ireland, and you say it's got a border with the European market, what about the south of England? It's 20 miles away by ferry. It's not far away by ferry. Companies come to me in trade and they tell me that it would be far better for them to be in the European market, single market, than the situation they currently have. It's paperwork central.
Again, just what I said previously, Northern Ireland, I think it's extraordinary not to recognise the unique and special status of Northern Ireland inside the United Kingdom because of the history of what's happened in that part of our country, which we've had an appropriate discussion on the anniversary of the Belfast Good Friday Agreement, which is a good reminder of the delicate situation in Northern Ireland, and it's right that we treat that situation with the consideration that it deserves and recognise that we do need to ensure that all strands of the Belfast Good Friday Agreement are respected, and it's important to avoid a hard border on the island of Ireland, and that's why we need a special set of solutions for Northern Ireland, which we've now found with the Windsor Framework.
To Windsor. Prime Minister, you said yesterday, and I was very pleased to hear this, I am very clear that I passionately believe in our union. So do I, and I'm very, very glad to hear you say that. But how does that relate to Northern Ireland's status within the union? Because this Windsor Agreement is meant to be a permanent arrangement. So won't Northern Ireland be perpetually locked into subjugation to EU law, making with the imposition of not only existing pre-Brexit laws in the single market, such as manufacturing goods, but also many new EU laws, which is blatantly, as a whole, inconsistent with a real union. Can you help with that? I find it very difficult to reconcile your passion for the union with the fact that EU law prevails to such an extent in relation to the single market and in Northern Ireland. They're just completely fundamentally inconsistent.
Well, I think, as we've discussed this before, Bill, I think recognising that the Belfast Good Friday Agreement should be respected and the balance of it should be respected, and that means that, you know, there is, as I was clear from the outset, there is a small amount, 3% of EU law that does apply in Northern Ireland. But two things that to bear in mind when it comes to this issue of sovereignty. One is that because of the Stormont break, for new and amended EU laws, the institutions of Stormont, the people of Northern Ireland, actually will have the ability to have their say over those laws, and ultimately will be able to block them if they don't agree with them. But just to answer your point right at the beginning, it's important to remember that even in the original protocol, the entire thing is subject to a consent vote. And that, you know, so this is only, any of this is only there with the overall consent of Northern Ireland. But what we've done with the Stormont break is make that more granular, so that for individual, rather than an all or nothing choice, on an individual basis, as new or amended laws come down the track, Stormont will be able to have its say and will be able to block them, the UK government.
And as you know, I'm not very keen on the Windsor framework, as you know. But having said that, on the question of the Stormont break, and what you said about it, this is intended to provide for democratic consent. But don't you accept that the break does not apply to, and it can't apply to, existing EU pre-Brexit laws, but nor does it apply to such vital lawmaking issues as state aid, electricity market, VAT, excise, and much of customs? So what effect do you think all this will have on the rest of the United Kingdom in terms of divergence?
Well, actually, it refers in Article 13.3, as you know, in the annex that's attached to it, to the specific set of goods, customs, and other rules that I think are referred to in the same way in the DUP 7 test. So I think it does actually refer to the rules that people were most concerned about. And that's something that they had raised with me previously, and as it refers, because if you look at their 7 tests and what they refer to, this encapsulates exactly that set of rules. Not necessarily for VAT, because we have a separate set of changes on VAT, as you're aware, and when I was Chancellor I cut VAT on solar panels. That was not able to apply in Northern Ireland as a result of the Windsor framework. It now will. We reformed alcohol duties and want to have a lower rate of beer duty in pubs relative to supermarkets. That wasn't able to apply. That now will. So actually on those things I think there's been enormous progress as a result of the Windsor framework, and the Stormont break is a very powerful mechanism. With regard to divergence in general, I'm confident that actually many of the things that on this we do agree, Bill. The advantages of Brexit and the ability to deregulate in areas like services, for example. There's complete flexibility on consumer, competition, social, etc. All those things are out with the protocol. That's where the bulk of the economy and growth is, and that's where we have the ability to do things differently, and we are, and you saw more of that from the Chancellor in the budget, and we will be able to do that across the UK.
Just that finally, just on this question of sovereignty and democracy, actually, I don't believe that the Stormont break will achieve the kind of objectives that have been set. We won't go into the details of that. That's quite a complicated story, but actually, I do think that the question of sovereignty does lie at the heart of this, and I don't think that the people of Northern Ireland are being given the benefit of the sovereignty of the United Kingdom. It's not a real union in that context, and I just ask you if you'd like to reflect on the fact that the Windsor framework does not represent the kind of union that the people of Northern Ireland ought reasonably to expect.
There are huge concerns expressed about these current proposals, and you must be aware of them, surely, that the ratios are going to reduce quality. There's a crisis in the workforce with 30% thinking about leaving, and we've heard stories of going to work in McDonald's and Asda because they pay better. So increasing the number of children that each childcarer has to care for without putting in additional support for training is going to potentially have the opposite effect. And one of the missed opportunities, really big missed opportunities here, is to extend early years education to some of the poorest households. We also have a challenge with training. Why would you not allow a training nurse, for example, or a paramedic to access these free childcare hours?
I mean, lots in there. I think it's just really important because I think it was missed in all of that. There's been a 30% increase in the funding rate for 2-year-olds, and that's going to kick in from September of this year. Now, that incremental money going in for the hourly rates will be used by providers to make sure that their teams are paid properly and to invest in whatever they want to.
Cover the costs.
And again, I think that was, as I said, it's a 30% increase. It was requested and warmly welcomed.
Prime Minister, the issue of children arriving on small boats. Should children in the care of the Home Office have the same protections under the Children Act as those in local authority care?
So, Caroline, I mean, first of all, look, the government, everyone takes the welfare of children incredibly seriously, as of course we should. And it's important that when it comes to this policy that we're sensitive and that we get it right. And there's been a lot of thought that's gone into getting it right. And I think we've got a policy that does what we need it to do, which is treats people with decency, treats people humanely, safeguards children's welfare, but also achieves the objectives that we're trying to achieve, which is to break the cycle of these criminal gangs and stop people coming here who shouldn't be coming here, and also some of them tragically dying en route, including children. And I think we've struck the right balance in all of those things.
So was that a no, that there shouldn't be equal protections under the Children's Act?
I think there are a set of, I mean, you probably know this better than me, I think there are a set of very specific laws that we have around corporate parenting that distinguish between the Home Office and local authorities, which you would know better than me. But in all cases, the welfare of children is taken seriously, safeguard is taken seriously, there is support and procedures in place to make sure children are looked after properly in all circumstances.
Thank you. The safeguarding of children is indeed important, and in 2011 the Independent Family Returns Panel was set up to safeguard children in family units who were being removed from the UK. Their role has been disapplied from this coming Friday. So what measures will there be in place to safeguard children who are being removed as part of a family unit?
So, children are not separated from families, and they will be made sure that the facilities for them and the accommodation for them is absolutely appropriate for them.
Who's going to have oversight of that?
Well, in the first instance, it would be the Home Office in terms of when people arrive and the provision of those facilities. If you're asking from a legal perspective...
So in 2011, the Home Office brought in a panel specifically to oversee the safeguarding...
Yes. So, I mean, the Home Office can do that itself.
OK, so it no longer needs the Independent Family Returns Panel at all?
No, it's not that it needs at all. I mean, we've got advice, we've put in place procedures, and the Home Office is perfectly capable of doing that.
OK, where specifically will family groups, so children with their parents who are scheduled for removal, be detained?
In appropriate accommodation for them, and they won't be separated from their families.
How much of that accommodation is currently available?
At the moment, there are a few thousand places and more are being built, and there's a full team at the Home Office that is working on the operationalisation of the bill, and it's one of the things that they're working through to make sure that it's ready at the time the bill is in force.
A few thousand places?
Overall for capacity, but as I said...
For families?
No, overall. But
right, so specifically for families?
I don't have an exact number, but the point is that they will be accommodated specifically in accommodation that's appropriate for them, and children would not be separated from families. No one would want to see that.
But there will be powers to detain children with their families?
The intention of this policy, the policy objective here is not to detain children, but it's important that we don't inadvertently create a policy that incentivises people to bring children who wouldn't otherwise come here. And that's why it's important that it applies equally to families, because otherwise you increase the likelihood that people bring children here. They make very dangerous crossings. I don't think anyone would want to see that. That's not good for children. So the policy should and must apply to families, but it's right that then we then look at families differently as we do, and they should be in accommodation that's appropriate for them, and that those family groups should not be separated. I think that is the right thing to do, because otherwise, you create, as I said, you create an incentive for a criminal gang to tell people to bring a child with them when they otherwise wouldn't be. And I don't think that is a good thing. I don't think we want to create a pull factor to make it more likely that children are being making this very perilous journey in conditions that are appalling. I don't think that's the right thing to do. We should not create a system that makes that more likely.
October of last year, HS2's Local Growth Action Plan, we were told that the government would be publishing that action plan later at the end of last year. Of course, in March, you've listened to it a month, you've made the announcement that we're pause on Euston. Some of the subcontractors there have over 50% of their order book at Euston. They're now having to pause for 2 years. Do you think this is really a way of helping to grow the economy, Prime Minister?
Well, I think it's important that we also get things right for the taxpayer. More generally, the HS2 project is, I think, supporting almost 30,000 jobs and almost 3,000 businesses, the bulk of which are SMEs and overwhelmingly, obviously, based in the UK. And I think over its time, it will also create 1,000 or 2,000 apprenticeships along the way as well. So as a project, it's already doing an enormous amount to support the economy, small businesses, apprenticeships and jobs more generally. But it's important that we get big infrastructure projects right, that we take the time to get them right, and that's what's happening with that bit of it.
But I think that when some project's got momentum and it keeps going, those small businesses you mentioned and others know that there's worth their time putting the money and effort in. They often bid for these contracts. For some of those small businesses, if they lose that level of the order book over 2 years, they will withdraw. Today, some of the staff are saying that there are great big jobs going in Canada, in Dubai. There are other parts of the world that these companies go and work in. If we're really trying to grow the economy, don't you think that the government's shooting itself in the foot with a delay like this on top of previous delays, which were admittedly you weren't in the driving seat for, which just suggests that Britain just can't get on with delivering big infrastructure projects?
I think it's important that we get the big infrastructure projects right, that we do them properly. They cost a lot of money. It's reasonable that we make sure they're going to be done on budget.
All work at Euston will pause for 2 years. Is that about getting it right?
Well, it is. We're taking the time to make sure it can be delivered within budget, given inflationary pressures. It's important that we get that right. And I think actually 97% of the businesses, the small businesses, are UK based, and as I said, something like almost 30,000 jobs.
Prime Minister, some of them don't go under as a result of this pause. Thank you.
I think it is a massive investment, tens of billions of pounds. I think that's supporting plenty of jobs and plenty of businesses up and down the country.